Good evening, everybody. It's Vicky Eade from the People's Food and Farming Alliance, and tonight I have with me the lovely, lovely Penny Foxwell,
Oh,
who is she created Plot and Pantry. So after a life-changing event in 2010, Penny transformed farmland near Hastings in Sussex into a thriving plot, and she discovered the healing power of growing, cooking, and preserving her own food. And now, tonight, we're very, very lucky because she's going to share that journey and lots of tips with you all, and to help us learn some of the skills that our grandmothers used to cultivate independence and their emotional well-being in an ever-changing world. And I think we can agree that the world is like that at the minute, isn't it?
yeah,
Welcome, Penny.
certainly is.
So
Thank
lovely
you.
to see you and to have you here with us tonight. I've
Thank
been so
you.
looking forward to this. Um,
I have
so
too, yeah.
yes, it's been a little bit in the making, but it's we're here now, so that's really exciting. So thank you
Yeah.
all so much for joining us, especially those of you watching on the replay. So I guess really to get us started, Penny, perhaps you can share how Plot and Pantry came about and what inspired you to start growing your own food.
Yes, I certainly can. It's an absolute passion of mine, as you can probably all see. But yes, I started growing food, as Vicky has said, after a very traumatic change in my life in my 50s. So I was divorced, had a horrid divorce, very public, very nasty, came out of a very difficult situation with pretty much nothing. But eventually, after quite a long time of, really struggling and fighting for myself and my family, I ended up in an Airstream caravan with my very best friend, who is now my partner, in on somebody else's farm, with the possibility of having one of the concrete barns eventually. And I did need to grow my own food, and it was that really got me going. And I suppose what I really, really wanted to share was that if I hadn't had that situation, I don't think I would have known quite the power of what being a little bit more self-sufficient was going to do for me. And I started growing in a tiny little, I ended up, before we came to the farm, in a tiny little courtyard garden with attached to a house where some friends had put me up, as it were. And I just started growing. And the more I grew and the more I did that, the better I felt. And the more my confidence came back, my creativity started really getting much, much better and much more alive again. And it just did me so much good that I just couldn't stop. And I always tell the story of how, in the night, somehow when you're going through a trauma, the nights are always the worst time, aren't they? And in the night, I'd wake up and these sort of waves of despair would sort of come over me. And I'd think, oh, I can't just lie here. I'm going to go downstairs, and I'd either go down and sow some seeds in a little pot, or I would make a pot of jam, which sounds crazy and totally ridiculous in the grand scheme of things. But it was fantastic. It made me feel like, it was something I could control, that I could actually be independent with, that nobody could take it away from me. All of those kind of feelings. And I think that we're coming into a time now where things are very uncertain, and just growing and producing your own food and learning how to just make do with it and store it for the winter, all those things began then, a long, long time ago now. And then I came down to near Hastings onto this farm, and we just took off a piece of pasture with a digger that a friend of ours had. They came in and they just literally scraped off a bit of pasture, and I kind of looked at it and I thought, my goodness, it's solid clay and I'm going to have to dig this. But once I started, I just couldn't stop. And it became a sort of real passion. And also it saved me money, and I realized how healthy it was and how it was so good to be outside with my hands in the dirt and everything else. And then, of course, the next stage, which is what I want to really share with you, came along, which is, what do you do with it? What do you do with all the food? And now we're in a time of garden gluts. I'm sure many of you have got courgettes already glutting and happily in your gardens, and French beans, and then the tomatoes will start, and cucumbers. And you've got so much. What do you do with it? So I learned how to preserve, and I learned how to pickle and ferment, and how to store a pantry, hence the name Plot and Pantry. And then in 2000 and wherever it was, lockdown 2020 was, the whole year we filmed. My other half is a cameraman by profession, amongst other things, and so he filmed me in the garden every week of the whole year. So we then put those videos up online and on my website, and a lot of that was eating in the winter from crops that we'd grown in the summer. So I learned a lot about preserving. We raised pigs, we had chickens, we made Parma hams, we hung salamis, we made jams and jellies and chutneys and ferments and pickles and all of those things. So my heart is really twofold. It's to give us some sort of resilience and independence with anything that might come down the tracks for us on the food front, and secondly because it does you so much good emotionally and mentally. Vicky knows this, I've told her before, but it's so healing to produce and to learn how to very, very simply make, pots and pots of food that you can just give away at Christmas, you can have in your pantry. That's why I did it. That's why it's called Plot and Pantry, because it's the other half. The pantry bit's the other half to the growing. So that's why it's called that. So yeah, that's the story.
That's really interesting. So what experience did you have prior? None? And how did you get your experience?
Yes, I had very little experience. I'd worked full time with my ex-husband, and I suddenly had no career, no job, no finance coming in, nothing. And I just thought, well, it can't be that difficult. I mean, people have done it all through the generations. I thought, I can do this. I did a lot of research. I mean, wonderfully, we have the internet now, and I had Google, and I read books, and I learned from other people, and I just followed my instincts. And I think one of the things about it was I never saw it as getting it right. I never saw it as something that had to be done a certain way. I thought, this is my own creative journey. This is my healing. This is me coming back to who I was, years ago. But I think when you've been squashed, that's what you kind of break out when you're released from that. And so I just followed my instincts, and I really don't believe that people have kind of green thumbs. Some people can do this and other people can't. I think you can do it, but you need to have an attitude of, this is fun, this is curiosity, this is, this isn't, I've got to do it the certain way that somebody tells me. I mean, it's trial and error. I still, every year something doesn't work in the garden, and, a preserve actually is revolting, and you get soft cucumbers or something, and I think, I'll learn how to. So it's just a kind of attitude thing, I think. That makes it so healing. I think if you go into it with that idea that you just do a little bit, and then you do a little bit more, and then you give somebody a hamper of preserves you've made at Christmas, and they say, wow, that's so delicious, and you think, well, I made that up, It's really satisfying.
Absolutely. And very, like you say, it can really help build confidence. And especially, like you say, if someone's lost all their confidence, and it can help you restore. So because there is that connection between our emotional well-being and confidence and all of that, isn't there? And actually just getting your hands in the dirt when you're gardening, all that grounding energy. And then of course, when you've grown your food, you've put love into that food, and so you're then absorbing that food when you're then eating it or passing it on to somebody else. So there's that connection.
There really is. And also I think you eat completely differently. I know that we eat completely differently to how we would have eaten before, because you have to eat what you grow, because it needs to be eaten. So you do eat. We eat far less meat. We eat much healthier. We have, at the moment, of course, it's the most wonderful time of year, but at the moment we're just having simple, tomatoes and cucumbers and homegrown salads. I have learned how to have salad all year from my tiny little greenhouse, but it does a lot of work. And just you learn that, you know, you've got, and I do this in my workshops, you know, I put veg on the table and I say, well, what would you do with 6 big courgettes that are overgrown, and, you know, and some kohlrabi and some carrots and some, what would you make and how would you make that delicious? And would you use herbs in it and spices in it? How would you make that something really special? And so the more you do that, the more, as you said, Vicky, the more special it is, because you've grown it, you've loved it, you've nurtured it. And I think the cooking bit and the preserving, but the cooking especially, you know, that's the kind of the finale of the growing, and they're not quite right if they don't fit together, because that's the end product is the bit that's really, really exciting. I love the growing too, but the cooking is great fun, and I see it as fun and creative, you know.
And also, if you've put all that effort into growing it, but then you don't eat it or you don't know what to do with it, then, and that's why exactly, because that's what, you know, you've put so much effort in, and you now need to actually be rewarded for that effort and to benefit from that. And
that's
you know,
true.
this is my 3rd growing season, so literally 2 years ago I had no idea, and I was like a toddler. I was so excited. You'd go out and find your first tomato, and then you'd pick it, and there's never been a tomato. I don't even like tomatoes, or didn't. Now I love them because I grow them, and I always, you know, I know what ones I like. And I think for me that first year, it was very much about confidence, and me growing in confidence with my growing. But then there's lots of people who grow the food, but they don't, it's kind of like the last piece of the puzzle. We need to know how to cook it, and we need to know how to preserve it when we do get a lot, rather than, you know, like my neighbors all benefited hugely from tomatoes, from cucumbers. But if we can preserve that ourselves, then that sees
I think that's right. Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think that it's the same journey actually. I think somehow people feel that, I don't know if this is true, but we'll hear in a minute from other people, but whether the growing, you sort of, you know, you can try and you do, and you get excited when you get your crop, but with the cooking it's like much more daunting, because you're not quite sure where to start. And I think things like, I remember when my creativity all started coming back after, you know, a very sort of abusive time, one of the big signs was my creativity started coming back, and I started cooking with spices, and I started, you know, using herbs much more, and I started experimenting, because it didn't really matter, but it just sort of was part of it. And I think it's the same journey as the growing. It's like you just start, and if somebody like me who's a little bit, maybe done a bit more of it, can inspire you, then I think that's the thing, because I see it as everybody's own creative journey is their own creative journey, and it's not about, you know, this is what you can do with this. Yeah, maybe try this, or, you know, have you thought of that? Or it's sort of infectious, and it kind of it goes, you know, it sort of bounces off each other, and so that's really kind of how I see it, as a sort of fun experiment. But as you say, you can't waste food that you've lovingly grown, and, you know, there's only so many. I mean, I heard a story of somebody, you know, would wake up in the morning and find their neighbour put courgettes on the seat of their car, you know, just to get rid of them. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. But actually, I mean, just on courgettes, you know, I mean, I grate them, freeze them, I make muffins, I make scones, I make fritters, I make soup, I make curries, I mean, there's 1,000 things you can do with courgettes if you have to. And I think it's the have to that makes you do it. But then you eat differently, and you shop differently, very differently, because you don't need to shop. And I don't like shopping for veg and stuff, because it doesn't taste right. So, you know, everything changes. It's amazing, and you get this lovely sense of self-sufficiency and preparedness. And I love the idea of having a pantry with, you know, gleaming shelves are full of delicious things, and my kids absolutely love it, and my grandkids as well. You know, they get lots of stuff for Christmas, but every year I try and do something slightly different, so it's not always exactly the same. But yeah,
that's continuing to allow your creativity and your kind of, but like you say, you can start very, very simply. And in actual fact, like going back to what you just said, the growing can actually be the easy part, because it's a seed. You put it in the ground, and often it kind of does it itself, so long as you
It
give
does.
it water. But then when it comes out of the ground, that doesn't cook itself. You've actually got to do something with it. And like you say,
That's
get
right.
that creativity. And that can be quite daunting for people. You know, you've got the excitement of you've grown it, but now you have to figure out what to do with it. And you desperately don't want to waste it because it took you so much effort to grow it.
Yeah, that's so
And
true.
so that's where, especially these days when, you know, there's many people don't have cooking lessons. We're not taught it in school or anything. So,
No.
and some people's idea of cooking is kind of just taking a plastic wrapper off and putting it in the oven.
Yeah.
And it can be very daunting to then think, oh, well, actually, I need to do a bit more than that.
Yeah.
So that's why we kind of came up with the idea for the cookery, that we're
Yeah.
teaching people to grow. But if we've got this cookery to help people learn how to actually use this and to get the confidence that you can tune into your intuition. And much like you said with how you were being more creative, it's like, it's just allowing people to kind of feel it and absorb it and then cook it.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think there's two things I think that are stopping that happening a lot. One is that as a generation, we have not been brought up with cooking from scratch. A lot of people haven't. So there's a really, like, I don't even know where to start on one hand. And then we've got all these cookery programs, you know, and things like MasterChef, which are, you know, they're great, but it's like, what?
Yeah.
You know, it's so complicated, it's so difficult, and it's so different. And then we got all these different cuisines from all around the world with all these different spices and all these different, it's very, very overwhelming, far more than the gardening, I think. And I think it's just finding your own path. And I'm a great believer in, you know, finding out what you like and how you like your food, and everybody's different. So that's on the cooking side, but the preserving side as well which I really want to cover, because I think that's a really important part, is, you know, just recovering the skills that were just, everybody had those skills, you know, a couple of generations ago. You know, they all knew how to salt things, how to make ferments, how to make jams, and how to have chutneys, and how to pickle things, and how to preserve things. And, you know, now we can freeze things, but with electricity as it is, you know, it's good to not freeze everything, because we want, I mean, put things in a jar and you use the jar again next year. It's a lot cheaper, and it's so satisfying, and it's much simpler than people think. And I mean, I just see myself as a guide, really. You know, just to hold people's hands and just say, look, oh, don't worry about that. You know, it may be foaming, maybe it's dangerous. I mean, I think we're all terrified of bugs, and sell-by dates have completely killed like any kind of, you know, instinct for when a food is off and all that kind of thing. So we'll cover all of that. All of that, you know.
And it is like, I mean, I'm nearly 60, and I made my first jam last week, which is ridiculous.
Yay!
But it was so simple, and it was only because I had this huge load of blackcurrants from the farm, and I was like, I don't know what to do with them. So I was like, well, I can make jam. Let's just give it a go. And it's so simple and it's so tasty. But now we've got, you know, several jars of it. So it is just, I'd never done it before, because I figured it was going to be really complicated, and I had to kind of put my big girl pants on and be like, yeah, I can do this. And then I was like, I've never done it before. It's so ridiculously easy, but it is so much more encouraging when you've got, and motivating when you've got someone else who's got that experience showing it in front of you.
I would have absolutely loved to have had somebody, you know, alongside showing me. And my mum's always made jam, so jam was not a problem. But there's sort of slightly more tricky things like sauerkraut or you know, pickled cucumbers or something like that. I just was like, oh, it would have been so nice for somebody to say, well, no, actually, you do need to cut off the end of the cucumber, because, you know, that's where the blossom was, and that tends to go soft. It's those little tips and tricks that are so, you know, they're so important, and they make it, it's still simple, but it's just that experience, that kind of recovering those skills. And I mean, I think, you know, I had I've got 3 sons, and I've often thought to myself, I think if I was having kids again now, you know, or grandkids as well, I teach them skills, because skills are sort of absolutely vital, I think, and I think they're going to be more vital in the future for us all. So, you know, that's what it's going to be about.
Yeah, and I think, you know, obviously we've got the Grow Your Own membership where we're helping people to grow their own, because again, that's the skills. But this side, like I
Yeah.
said, we need to actually be able, and you're absolutely right. If we have the skills to grow our own food, cook our own food, and even preserve our own food, then that will allow us to feel so much more confident, regardless of what might come along down the track, because we just don't know.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So, what would you say are the most important first steps? Like, I know you're giving out great tips there, like who knew, cut the end off the cucumber and things like that. But what are the kind of like the real basic steps for people to get started?
Well, I think for people differ completely in where they are in their life. You know, I mean, I'm now coming into retirement and stuff, so I've got more time. So I think time is a really big issue, and I think for sort of young mums and dads, you know, who are both working full time, you know, they've got kids, they're just finding it easier just to throw chicken nuggets in the oven than cook something. That's one thing. So I think and you know, it depends how much time you've got. I think the most important thing is to work out where you quite like to get to in terms of cooking. You know, I quite like to be able to cook what I grow to this extent. Just for each person to kind of work that out and think, okay, because once you've done it with one vegetable, you know, or fruit, it gives you the confidence for the next one. So I think it's really good to start sort of baby steps if you are worried about it. If you're not worried about it, and lots of people I'm sure will have done quite a lot of cooking, because the sort of people that would want to come on here are people who've probably done a bit of growing and cooking as well, and you want to become more self-sufficient. I now hardly ever buy veg. I certainly don't buy much fruit, maybe lemons and that sort of thing, oranges maybe, but not, because I use the fruit that we've grown in the summer, in the winter. And I eat fruit every day on my yogurt in the morning. So, you know, there's always berries and raspberries and stuff like that in the freezer or in bottles. But if you want to become, you know, just take that next step to self-sufficiency, I can help with that. Because I know that when you get round, for instance, when we get round to sort of January, February, and we're planning the garden, I plan my garden with my pantry in my mind. So I grow enough of what I can to do what I want to do on the cooking front, if you see what I mean. So rather than just growing everything and then cooking from it, you get to the stage where you actually think,
helps you plan.
I want to cook that. I want to have that many tomatoes because I want to have that many bottles of passata or whatever it is. And so therefore I will grow that much. So we'll get there when we get to sort of the new year. We'll start to plan the garden around the cooking. A sort of, you know, it's slightly around the other way, if you know what I mean. But I think the first steps would just be to just be really honest about what you'd like to achieve and whether you'd like some help, whether you want to get started, you know, and then we can all talk to each other and help each other with it. Otherwise, I don't think there's any place to start, because I think everybody's probably in a different place slightly with their cooking. But I think if you can see that by learning to cook your own food, even if it's from a farmer's market or from a shop rather than growing it, whatever, by doing that, you begin to eat differently. And you begin to eat much more healthily, and you begin to think about your gut health, and you begin to think, okay, I need to ferment some foods, and I want to make some kefir and some kimchi because I want to have my health. So there's loads of different reasons why people would want to learn to cook more. But again, we'll do things like batch cooking. We'll do things like cooking ahead of time, so that you can cook at the weekend for the whole week if you're busy. You know, all of those kind of things I'd like to cover. I feel very strongly about the time thing. Yeah, and
exactly. I think that is everyone is so busy, and so people think it's going to take a really long time, or they just, like, I got in from work tonight at 6 o'clock and then had to, but luckily I'd made something last night that would cover us for tonight as well. So eat that. That was a courgette tart, actually, because I had loads of
lovely
and eggs from the farm and that. So, but it's things like that, isn't it? It's kind of like you said, planning the garden based on what you want to eat. It's also kind of planning your week on what
Yeah.
you've got. You know, like I knew I wouldn't have time to
Yeah.
cook tonight, so I
Yeah.
cooked something yesterday that would last for tonight. And it's just kind
Yeah.
of planning that out, so it doesn't have to take longer.
No,
And
it really
as you
doesn't.
say, you can plan it at the and maybe do an hour or so's cooking at the weekend, but that can be your meals for the week. Or and even with
Oh yeah,
breakfast,
definitely.
you can make
Yeah, I
it
mean,
much
I
easier.
remember my mum, my mum was well, I'm really ancient. I was born in the sort of 50s, so not that far really after rationing. I think rationing was still there when I was born,
Yes.
but my mum, it was amazing. I mean, she would make, a chicken last at least 3 or 4 days, and always had wonderful, very simple English cooking. I mean, no spices really, nothing like that, but lots of flavor. She did grow a lot of her own veg when she could, when she was in this country, which wasn't all the time. My dad was a soldier, so we were all over the world. But when she was in England, she did grow veg, and she would make delicious food, but it would always be with, she would get every single last little bit out of everything because she'd been through rationing as a young mum. So she had that. And I think we've lost that. And I think it's saving money. It's being healthier. It's good for the planet. It's sustainable because you're not doing air miles and things like that. I think all of those things are part of it. But I do agree. I think batch cooking, I mean, I hardly ever would cook. I mean, I make something really simple, like veg from the garden with, a piece of fish or some chicken or something. Yes. But if I was going to make something, like cook something,
Yeah.
like a curry or something, I never do anything smaller than a great big vat.
Yeah.
Freeze it all or,
Yeah.
whatever, because that's the way that you eke out everything that you can possibly can, and it becomes then much less of a drag, and you're not, as you say, not coming in at 6 o'clock and thinking, what on earth are we going to eat?
Yeah.
Because there's always something to eat.
And like you say, and then you are able to eat much more healthily because
Yeah.
there's always something healthy. And if you've got stuff in the freezer, then you can just think, oh, well, actually, if I get that out before I go to work, then that'll be fine for me to, that'll be ready, and I can just heat that up when I get home, or just make some rice or whatever to go with it.
Yeah.
So I think
that's absolutely true. But I think it's also quite daunting for people who haven't done cooking like that. So I think I don't want it to be like a sort of, this is what this is the way, like Martha Stewart, shouldn't say that, but somebody saying this is how you should do it. I think it's much more what works for you, because all of our lives are different. I mean, I get up really early. I'm an early person. I'm absolutely sort of out for the count by about 9 o'clock in the evening because I get up so early, but I get an awful lot done before the day starts, really. There's, everybody's different.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different thing. Everybody's got different times. And also, I think it's so important, and I really want to emphasize this right the way through as we go through the year. It's got to be fulfilling, and it's got to be fun, and it's got to be good for your kind of emotional and mental health, because it's got to be creative. It'd be awful if it was just like, oh, I've got to do it like this because that's what's been told to me, that's how I should cook it. That would be awful. But it will also be incredibly practical and lots of tips and time savers and things like that.
And I think like you said earlier about your mum and food rationing and that, we've become very spoiled in the fact that there's a supermarket pretty close to everybody, and we can just go down there and whatever we want, if we decide that we want strawberries in December, we can get them. They may not be the nicest tasting, they certainly won't taste as good as the ones out of your garden, but it's kind of, we have to get back into like the rhythm of nature and the rhythm of the food growing and eating seasonally. And then there's a reason that there's different food. I'm a nutritional therapist, so there's a reason that there are different foods at different times of the year that serve different purposes for us, for our gut, exactly as you said, and our health benefits by eating seasonally. It doesn't mean we have to, and especially if we're then preserving some of our summer gluts, etc., then those are a real treat in the winter, or over to keep us going over the hungry gap, etc. So it's just kind of thinking about it a different way, but exactly as you say, finding the way that works for you. There isn't any one way. And I have to, like you said, the cookery programs. I can remember going back to like the 80s or whatever when Nigella brought all of her books out. And they were
Yeah,
like these lists of ingredients. There'd be like
yeah.
500 ingredients, most of which cost an absolute fortune and your local people had never heard of. And then, but it's like we've gone through that pain and we're coming back out the other side of like creating much simpler but really tasty and nutritious meals.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think, you know, we all know that the prices in the supermarkets are absolutely sky high. And, you know, at the PFFA, you know, that's not kind to farmers, and it's very difficult for them to be able to get their produce to local people without all the miles and the storage and the gas storage and the chemicals and the pesticides and all the rest of it. And we're seeing, you know, an NHS crisis because, you know, we're full of junk.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be absolutely vital to have those skills and to know how to make. I mean, I can do bread, we can do homemade yogurt, there's loads of stuff that I can pass on that I've just decided I'm not going to get it. I'm just not going to buy that stuff because I know what's in it. I mean, it's terrifying what's been said about just bread, you know, what goes into bread. And it's awful. You know, bread is the staff of life and it should be really health giving. So I think that all comes into it. I think the air mile thing comes into it. It's awful to me to think that, you know, French beans come from Kenya or somewhere, you know, that we can grow them here, and we can pickle them, and we can can them, and we can freeze them, and we can eat them. You know, we don't have to eat them. You were so right. We don't have to eat strawberries in the winter. It's so exciting when the first ones come. I will not buy tomatoes. I mean, that is me. I'm not saying anyone else should, but I don't want to buy tomatoes because I know they don't taste of anything. Yeah. And I get so excited when the first tomatoes start coming in because I grow masses of tomatoes because I make a lot of passata and I make a lot of roasted tomatoes in the freezer, and I make a lot of just bottled tomatoes, skinned and bottled, so I can use them. And I'm absolutely stunned that they do not taste like tin tomatoes. They just don't. They taste exactly like homegrown tomatoes. So that's why I have to have so many tomatoes. There's only 2 of us here, so we don't eat that. You know, we try very hard to eat as many tomatoes as we can, but we no way can we eat 50 plants worth, you know, tomatoes. So it is about the canning. So I think I'm hoping that this membership will be the other half to the growing your own, because I'm hoping that it will give the whole reason for it, you know, because it's so exciting to think, oh, wow, I don't think we had quite enough passata last year. I think I'd like to make, or I think maybe I had a bit too much. I had to give a lot away, so we'll just reduce it a bit. And you become the captain of your own ship. You become the person who's in control of your own food and your own life, and that is incredibly healing in such an uncertain, frightening time that we live in. So I feel very strongly about that bit.
No, me too. But the flavor is entirely different. I mean, the thing, like I say, I didn't even like tomatoes. I would only ever eat cooked tomatoes. And that went for my whole family. And now we all eat tomatoes on salads, raw and that, which is like, you know, it took me 57 years of like, no, I don't like tomatoes, to then eating them. But it's because the flavor is so much deeper.
It really
so
is.
if you can grow your own, then it's even nicer. But if you can even, it, like you said, it doesn't matter if you're buying them in, but it's just knowing what to do with these basic ingredients, and rather than having to buy it all already made. So what do you think some of the what challenges did you face when you first started, and then how did you overcome those?
I think I did the wrong amounts of things a bit. I did obviously did what I grew. So I had, you know, a huge amount of jam, and we don't eat that much jam. I mean, I gave a lot away, and it's wonderful for presents and things, but I did probably a bit too much, and we tend to eat slightly more savory things. So I then would change that and actually make more chutneys and more relishes and more pickles and things like that, which we eat with salads all the year round, and it's easier, I think. But I mean, there are only adjustments. I don't think I ever felt, oh gosh, I can't do this, or I never felt, oh, that's really horrible. I think you just have to sort of go with confidence.
Yeah.
And I think that you can be very, very judgmental and self-critical when you're gardening or doing this, and we have a joke in this house that I often say, do you think there's enough salt in that? We have this little saying, because it's so easy to be self-critical of your own food that you make, and you wouldn't dream of being that critical of it if somebody else made it. But when you make it yourself, it's like you want it to be perfect, and you have to really guard against that, because there's always the next time you make it, just adjust it a little bit, make it a little bit differently, or just think to yourself, I don't think that herb really goes. I don't think I like that. I think I'd rather have parsley in that. I think rosemary's a bit strong. Or, that's part of the fun, and it has to be part of the fun rather than, I got it right. I think that's the disaster when it comes to cooking.
And again,
and bread. Bread really does its own thing. And, sometimes my sourdough just goes whoosh, and it's absolutely beautiful with great big holes in it. And, it's absolutely wonderful. And then you do it the next time and it just goes slightly.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a bit like that, like gardening, actually. Gardening is just the same. And it's just not wanting to have it, not being too sort of pushy with it. I think that would be the most big mistake, would be to be self-critical. I think that would be or be perfectionist about it. I think that would be the worst mistake. I think it's got to be a fun sort of curiosity thing. You've got to be like a kid, really, with it, and then learn the skills, and then you're away.
Yeah, and knowing, like you say, accepting that, like the weather, it's going to be different every day, and it's time, and it won't necessarily turn out exactly the same, but that's okay. And maybe you might make it better, or and again, tuning into your intuition and being, actually, I think I might put a bit more of this in this time.
Exactly.
And then seeing where it goes, and allowing it to become playful. I'll
tell you a funny story. I was making some rhubarb and ginger jam, and it's delicious, and I love it. And I took out of the freezer what I thought was chunks of frozen ginger, and I grated it in. It was already grated. I did it in ice cube trays with ginger, which I often do because it's so much easier to have it done, and it was in a bag of little cubes of grated ginger, I thought. Well, it turned out to be horseradish.
Oh no.
It wasn't ginger. It was delicious. It was such a nice jam. It was really good. And I laughed so much about it, because I thought, God, I never in 100 years would have thought of putting horseradish in rhubarb jam. But actually, if you think about it, it's quite like ginger in a way, because it's hot, and it's got that sort of slight spiciness.
Yeah.
It was really, really good. I mean, I didn't do it again, but it was delicious. But that sort of thing, it's like, that's going to happen, because I'm really bad at labeling things sometimes and that sort of thing. But I think it's the fun side of it, and we often talk about, oh yeah, what's so good, your rhubarb and horseradish jam, and I thought, well, maybe that might become a thing. You never know. I wonder if any of you lot have ever done anything like that. I bet you have.
I've done something opposite to that. When we were in America once, I was making a chili, and so I bought a little tiny tin of chipotle, and without having a clue what it was, but it said it was chili, so I'm like, oh, that's fine. And I was like, oh, it's a tiny, so I put the whole thing in, and that's the only meal I've ever cooked that none of us ate, because we took a mouthful and it like literally blew our heads off.
Yeah.
And then we were all like, no, we can do it. Can't waste a whole meal. So I think we all managed about 3, and then like our mouths were on fire, and we threw it away. But we tried, and I now know.
You tried. And it's a memory. It's a family memory.
Exactly. And I now know, no, not chipotle. That's too hot for our family. So we learn these lessons, don't we? And again, it's that just trying things. But I do remember being very critical of myself, thinking, oh, for goodness sake, I should have checked. And it's like, I'm on holiday and I'm cooking dinner and I'm in a foreign country, and I've bought something, and it's like, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
The pizza delivery,
Absolutely.
not normally what I would eat, but we did, and it was fine. You
Yeah.
know, we all survived rather than trying to eat the whole thing, because I don't think we would have survived. Our heads would have exploded. So I can see there's lots of comments coming in. So let's just have a look back and see what we've got, so we can see what, gosh, there's lots. Okay, here we go. So yeah, there's a few of the attendees who, I think that's you, Anne. I work for a mental health charity, and we always have a gardening group. So yeah, that, you know, so people using gardening therapy as healing modalities, which taps into different parts of the brain. It is very fascinating the way these things all work in synergy with each other, and then being able to take that out the other side to then create your own meals and your own food. That just expands on the whole thing even more, makes it bigger.
So good. Yeah, that's so right.
Apparently the enzymes and elements in the soil are better than the proverbial Prozac, and the research has been proven and peer reviewed. Absolutely. You know, so the soil has a microbiome of its own, and all the bacteria, etc., in that, and obviously we do as well. And unfortunately, our gut health these days suffers a lot because most of us don't have the right balance of bacteria in our guts, and therefore that then leads to things like anxiety and poor mental health in that respect, and challenges on us. Whereas simply by regulating the microbiome a bit more, we can actually get rid of a lot of that. So yeah, it's very much and like you, and then you've got the other, so getting that dirt under your nails, and you know, the only good thing that clears that is washing your hair, or that's the only thing I find that actually gets it out of your nails. So what's a bit of dirt? It doesn't really matter when it's out of the garden and that. And again, that will be giving you some of that bacteria that you actually need to help.
And if you think about it, the stuff that's in the supermarkets that's all washed and stuff, you know, you don't know what's it washed in. The soil's been replaced. What has it been washed in? So many things, all those chlorinated salad leaves and stuff like that. It's just, I mean, I'm just playing with, I think, a very dangerous game, really, eating stuff like that. I think, but you know, I understand that we have to eat like that. A lot of people do have to eat like that, but the soil, oh my goodness, I mean, you could just do a whole course on what's in the soil. It's just so amazing, and it's still in your veg. You know, all of that wonderful stuff is still on your veg, probably some of it when you eat it, if you, however much you try and clean it.
Absolutely.
You know, there's nothing wrong with soil.
No, and we've done, so we're just about to do our third glyphosate event, where we talk about the effects of glyphosate, and it's, a lot of people wash their food thinking that and you can do that and take off what's on it, but if it's been grown in soil that's got the pesticides, including like Roundup, glyphosate on it, it's in the food. You can't get rid of that. It's grown in that. So when you grow it in your garden, you know that there isn't any of that, and then you're cooking, and then so you're preserving the gut health, because glyphosate has been shown to disturb our gut health. People seem to be very looking forward to the preserving, which I am too. Sorry, Penny, carry on.
No, carry on. You go. I could go. I mean, I'll talk forever. So you know, you can carry on.
But no, people are really looking forward to the preserving.
Good.
So Marie says,
mine. I love the preserving.
Oh, good. We're going to be very lucky, aren't we? Because I'm very excited now. I did my jam, and that's the extent of my preserving. Yeah, Marie says she doesn't know where to start. No, you and me both, Marie. So we're both going to be able to find out. It's finding out what preserves you like to eat. Just find a recipe that sounds nice and go for it. Absolutely. Just go for it. That's what it's all about. Sam has a whiteboard on my fridge, a menu plan for the week to save on the thought process, and I pick one from my list. Yeah, I have like my book of recipes. They're like the family recipes and that we just eat, and then you go through stages, and then sometimes I'll go through it and I'm like, hey, I haven't cooked that for months or years. I've completely forgot about that. And it's like, growing your repertoire of meals, and then they kind of, you get them into your head that you don't need a recipe book, and you can like, oh, I don't have some of that, but I've got that, and you can, it's starting to get that confidence to swap things out, and to, or opening the fridge and being, right, what's in there, what can I make from that? And it's just helping people to, but you've got to start somewhere, and then you just grow those skills as you go.
I think that's absolutely right. And if you get the basic skills, for instance, with the preserving, what we'll do is we'll cover fermenting so that you know it's safe. We'll cover pickling, so that, and give you the right quantities of water and vinegar and stuff like that, so that it actually tastes nice. We'll cover the safety of water bath canning, so that you know that something is sealed properly. Once you get those kind of like simple basics, then you know the world's open to you. You can pickle anything. You can make any kind of ferment, because you've got the basic knowledge. It's having that basic skill. So it's not like every time you make something it's completely new. So if you feel a bit daunted that, I don't know where to start, Marie was saying, wasn't she? That's fine, because what we'll do is we'll give you the actual process, so that you know that, okay, so that's the process. So I know, for instance, when you're fermenting, this is just a tidbit, but when you're fermenting and you make the brine gets made around the sauerkraut or kimchi or whatever it is, as long as everything is underneath the level of that brine, it's safe. It just is, because the bacteria that is made in the ferment keeps all the bad bacteria out. So, but the air would bring it in. So that to me is so simple, isn't it? That as long as that level is right, and I'll show you how to get that level right, you will know whatever it looks like, whether it's cloudy, whether it's smelly, whether it's safe. It's those kind of things. And that's what the traditional skills, after all, our grandparents, our great grandparents, they didn't have the hygiene that we have now. They didn't have, wonderful wipes and sprays and things like that. There were bugs everywhere. So, they didn't have fridges half the time. So, there were loads of bugs, but if you get those, like that knowledge of actually why it's happening and what needs to be done to keep it safe, then you get that confidence. Then you think to yourself, gosh, I've got so many cucumbers today and I need to get them under some brine. It's easy. Do you see what I mean? That's why preserving is, I think, such a wonderful skill, because you don't start again with every recipe. It's like, it's just a basic knowledge. Yeah, you've got a base, like your jam making. You've made blackcurrant jam. You could make strawberry jam. You could make any kind of jam, because you've made jam. It's like that. So it's simplifying it, taking all the kind of pressure out of it, I think, is what I'd love to do, because once you have those skills, then you can pass them on to your children and grandchildren, and they're going to need them in the future, I reckon.
Absolutely. And Joe has a really, really good question. Shall we start collecting used glass jars for preserving?
Yes, definitely.
Brilliant.
Definitely. You can use the smart preserving jars, with the rings and the sealing lids.
They're like
and I'll show you, Kilner or Ball or whatever, or Wex another one, I think, but that's very expensive. But they are expensive, but you'll have them forever, sort of thing. You can do that, but I could always keep all my bigger jars. I mean, things like, for instance, if you're going to put French beans in a jar with pickle them, you don't want to slice them up. You want to have a nice jar full of lovely long strings of French beans. Then you probably need to keep one of those big jars of olives, or one of those jars, a tall jar. I keep all the possible jars. I get new lids, and they're very easy to get online if you need to. So if they've had vinegary stuff in and the lids look a bit damaged, you can just put new lids on. But just definitely keep your jars, because they will all work, and you can have whichever ones you want. You can have pretty little hexagonal ones. You can have Orco jars, which are really pretty, but they're all you have to buy. But there's plenty of jars that work.
And then that makes it much more cost effective as well.
Much more cost effective. And I'll show you how to sterilize them properly before you use them, and how to make them as safe as you can, how to stop them breaking when you put them in a water bath. All of those tips will all be in the thing.
And I must admit that for me is where I lack the confidence, because exactly as you were saying, I don't want the glass to break and then it to be have ruined whatever I've made. I don't want to think about poisoning people. So I want to know that it's safe. So it is that's the once you've got that knowledge, it's going to make you so much more confident, because
so much more confident.
Exactly like you said, that you'll know, oh no, that's okay, that's fine, I can do that.
You'll get absolutely, you know, blasé about the whole thing.
Won't we? We'll all be like, I know what I'm doing.
Jam.
I made that in my sleep.
Oh yeah, absolutely, that's easy. And there's little things like, for instance, with the garden, I've learned little tricks, because what's difficult is you get 4 cucumbers, but your jar's going to need 6 or 8. What do I do? Because the cucumber is going to go soft if I, leave it. That sort of thing. It's just how to do it in small quantities. So I make up a large amount of pickling liquid, and then I can just use that as it comes in. So, just sterilize a couple of jars, fill them up, put the thing in. So there's lots of tricks and things like with tomatoes. I tend to have bags in the freezer that I put tomatoes in to make passata from, because when I make passata, I don't want to do all of that work for, a few tomatoes. So I want to do, 10 jars. So, there's lots and lots of little things along the way that just make it simple. I promise you, it is not difficult. If it was difficult, just think about this. If it was difficult, would my grandparents' generation have been able to do it? They wouldn't, because they didn't have the equipment that we have now. They didn't have all sorts of things. They didn't have thermometers. They didn't have, all the things that we use. They didn't have freezers. And they managed. And if they can do it, I used to say that to myself, if they can do it, I can do it.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, and go back a few more generations even than that. And the lack of, we're just so spoiled now that, and with that spoiling, we've lost that knowledge, but it's not that far away. There are people like yourself who can then pass that back. And exactly as you said earlier, we can then pass that on to our children and our grandchildren. And it keeps going, and we can revive that. Otherwise, these skills kind of will get lost. So Joe says, when will we start teaching preserving? While our plants grow, we can be learning preserving from shop bought veg and fruit. Yeah, absolutely. So
I mean, I think what we're going to do is do one. I think we're going to do, aren't we, Vicky? You could say this, but I think we're going to do one on cooking from the summer gluts, as there were. So some ideas about courgettes and French beans, and cucumbers, those sort of things, tomatoes, the things that you're probably going to have a lot of this month. And then in September we'll start on the preserving, and we'll do all the different sorts of preserving right through till Christmas. So we'll do, I think that's what I'd like to do, is to do, preserving the tomatoes, so passata and sauce and stuff like that, how to can it, how to make it safe outside the freezer so that you can have really lots of it. And then we'll do pickling, and then we'll do fermenting, and we'll do putting things under oil. That's another one. We'll make fruit vinegars. We will make cordials. We will make all of those sort of things. And then what would be fun, I'm hoping we might be able to do, is to then do sort of like ideas for Christmas hampers, what you could put in it. We'll do jams as well. We'll do jams and jellies and chutneys. I mean, we'll try and fit it all in, but we'll keep going with it. But yes, definitely preserving, because we're actually coming into preserving season quite soon. So I hope that works for everybody. But we might do a few recipes as well. So we'll just do, put maybe a couple of recipes each month to just keep, oh wow, because that's a real staple. Things like, for instance, trays of roasted veg, a tray of roasted veg in the winter is going to be root veg and stuff like that. The tray of roasted veg in the summer is going to be aubergines and peppers and that. So we'll have ideas as well, but we will do preserving, because that, I think, it sounds like a lot of people want to do that. So.
Yeah. So brilliant. I'm really looking forward to it. Margaret says, going back to our stories, me and my chipotle, my mum put what she thought was butter beans out of the fridge and used it in a soup, and it was sliced apples. Oops. I mean, that could work, depending on what it was going with. It might work.
They look the same, don't they? That's amazing.
Oh, and Marie says she thought she bought 2 sweet pepper plants, red and orange, and turned out the orange one was Scotch bonnet. That's quite
no.
Isn't it, then?
Yeah, I have never grown Scotch bonnet. I have to say, I haven't got the nerve.
Yeah, and then they're talking about like the foods that we buy from the supermarket and what they're coated in. And yeah, like, so, you know, some of the food from the supermarket's now got a peel on it. I'm not sure where it's being used at the minute.
Gosh.
Margaret makes piccalilli. Yeah, it's so, I mean, like my grandparents used to make, both my grandmas
Yeah.
were really good for growing stuff and for preserving stuff. My mum didn't do any of that, not because she
No,
was lazy, because she had loads of kids, and there
different
wasn't the
generation.
time. But and like you say, a different generation. So
Mm.
I'm really looking forward to getting, and Syra's really interested in learning to plan what to grow and how to store for the winter months. Yeah, that's just going to
Cool.
be so
Cool.
so useful for people. Right, sorry, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
go, just trying to. Oh, Belinda says she tried to make sauerkraut once and just ended up with a moldy mess. That's not good, is
I love sauerkraut. It's wonderful stuff, and I'll show you how to make really good sauerkraut. It's not
Yeah.
difficult, but you do need to get the balance of the salt right. But it's not difficult, and yeah, I make lots. I'm doing it at the moment because cabbages, the summer cabbages, are great for sauerkraut. So
Are they a bit
I'm doing
softer?
quite a lot now.
A bit more?
They're not, yeah, they're not as tough as the winter
Yeah,
cabbages. You
yeah,
know, they've got those lovely tight hearts, which is
yeah,
really cool for sauerkraut. But I
bet
think
they are.
yeah, I mean, it's a great thing to have because it's so incredibly good for you. And also it does, it freezes all right. It also lasts
Oh,
in the fridge. I mean, sauerkraut and kimchi will last in the fridge for 6 months easily.
yes.
So that, you know, you can do your sauerkraut for the winter, you know,
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
but it does freeze. But you have to drain it a bit and that sort of thing. But we'll cover it. We will cover it. But yes, sauerkraut will not be a soggy mess.
And these things are really, you know, especially during the winter, they help our immune system, because not only are they
Yeah.
helping our gut health, but they're helping our immune system. And, you know, sometimes things come along that mess up our immune system.
Mm,
Let's see.
yeah.
Blackcurrant jam, beetroot chutney, and sweet cucumber pickle. Wow, Sam, that's amazing.
Lovely. Lovely.
Duh, 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 duh. Sorry, actually, that's a good point. So, you know, what about space? If we're talking, obviously not for
Yeah.
cooking, actually even for cooking, if you're growing,
Yeah.
you know, storing it. But if you've not got a very big garden or any space at all, we can still grow some of our own, but
Yeah.
equally absolutely fine to buy it, or to team up
Definitely.
with someone who's got maybe a glut, and you make, you know, they give you the
Yes.
cucumber, you do the pickling, and then you give them some back. Maybe it's
Exactly.
building
That
community as well, isn't it?
that's so cool. And you know, you can store once bottled things, pickles, ferments, you know, bottled tomatoes or bottled plums or apples or pears or whatever. Once they're bottled and sealed properly, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So you know they're absolutely tight and they'll last at least a year. You can put them under a spare bed. You know, they could
Yeah,
go anywhere. They don't have to be in the right temperature or the right, as long as they're not boiling hot in the sun or something. But you know, it's amazing where you can store things away. It's rather like with gardening. You know, you can grow a lot of food in containers. With
mhm.
preserving and preserving, especially not cooking so much, but preserving, you can actually preserve an awful lot in small spaces. It's amazing how much stuff you can squirrel away, and it's just such a lovely feeling. You know, just even if you have just one shelf of glistening preserves, it's so beautiful. I mean, I go in and look at them, I
And
think,
look
oh, they look
proudly.
so good. Yeah, they're so gorgeous. I feel like one of those sort of children's stories. I think have got a lot to answer for. You know, Little Grey Rabbit and people like that with little storehouses, you know, Brambley Hedge
Yeah.
and all of those lovely stories. But it is a lovely cozy feeling, and it's a feeling of independence and freedom from things that you can't control.
Yeah,
You know, because
absolutely.
I think we can't. You know, we don't know what's going to come in the supermarkets. We don't know. I mean, it's been pretty wild lately
Yeah.
when there've been shortages of things.
And I think it might get wilder. So if we've all got,
Yeah,
if we can do all this, then Janet's looking forward. She used to make jam and chutney, but looks forward to being encouraged to start these again and cook
yeah,
a lot
definitely,
too.
Janet.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying. Right, I think we've nearly caught up. Okay, we have. Does anybody have any other questions? Otherwise, So to give you some details of the cookery membership, the first class will be on the 20th of August. Haven't even turned my calendar over yet. Yeah, the 20th of August. And then it will be monthly. Are we doing month? I think we're doing monthly after that.
Yeah, we're doing monthly.
Yes. And so is that right, Penny? Have I said the right date?
Yes, it's the 20th of August, because we wanted to get one cooking one in before we get to the end of the summer.
That's
and
right.
Then it'll be the first Tuesday after that of every month, won't it?
That's right. Thank
it's
you.
It's going to be the first Tuesday of September, first Tuesday of October, November, December.
So there'll be one in 2 weeks from tonight, and then they'll get into their natural rhythm, which is the first Tuesday of the month. I haven't created the membership yet, hopefully tomorrow. But so for any of you that are interested in joining, then just please bear with us. I will be sending it out to everybody, and you will be able to join. And I will be doing that quickly because it's in 2 weeks tonight that we start.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, you're very welcome, everybody. We're getting lots of thank yous and such. Oh, are you on Instagram, Penny?
Yes, I am. Plot and Pantry. You can find me. You can look at my website, which is www.plotandpantry.co.uk, and I'm at Plot and Pantry on Instagram. So you can you'll get a lot of tips that way as well. So it'll kind of broaden it. But I think doing it together, I'll be in my kitchen next time, not sitting here quietly. Hopefully we'll be able to, you'll be able to see me doing some things. I'll certainly be showing you some things, but yeah, if you want to fill in the gaps, you can, or the other way.
And I will include Penny's details when I send out the replay. So yeah, well, I hope everyone's enjoyed that. It looks like they have. Again, as I say, lots of thank yous and looking forward to learning from you.
Great.
And yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for coming, everyone, tonight. Lots of loving faces going on. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Penny, for that inspiring story and just helping people realize that we can do this. We can do it.
And we'll do it together. It'll be really fun.
It will be fun, and we'll kind of grow the community, and we can ask, and it will be one of those where if you've got questions, you don't need to feel like, oh, that's a silly question. There's no such thing as a question. And if you're thinking that, there's probably at least 2 other people thinking it too. And I'm always asking questions. So yeah, we're really looking forward to it. As I say, first session will be on the 20th of August. I will send everything out to you as quickly as I can, and we look forward to you joining us. And I'm certainly looking forward to learning how to preserve and do all the things with Penny. So thank you so much, Penny. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you all again soon.
We will.
Thanks a lot then. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.